Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something that I think affects almost all of us, especially online. It's that feeling of just exhaustion with hostility.
Yeah, that constant state of conflict. And we've been looking at some really interesting material that proposes a pretty radical way to deal with it.
It's from excerpts of a text called Dialogue, Understanding, and Dissolving Ignorance. And our mission today is to dig into its core argument.
Which is pretty counterintuitive.
Very. I mean, our first instinct when we see something that provokes us or challenges us is to shut it down.
Silence them. Report them. Just get them out of your space.
Exactly. But this material argues that's precisely the wrong move, that it actually feeds the problem.
And that's the central idea we want to explore. What if the best way to handle hostility isn't to fight it head on, but to try and understand where it comes from?
It's a huge mindset shift, moving from just reacting to the behavior to, I guess, analyzing the psychology behind it.
If you can get to the root cause, you have so much more leverage. It changes the entire game.
Okay, let's just dive right into that because the very first piece of advice is, for me, the hardest one to swallow.
I get that.
The source says when you see that hostile post about disability or society, whatever it is, the first response should be, let them speak.
Which takes an incredible amount of emotional discipline. I mean, your gut reaction is that adrenaline spike, right?
Oh, absolutely. You want to fire back immediately.
And that, the source calls that the instant killer of learning. The second we get defensive, we slam the door on understanding anything.
We just prove their point, in a way.
Exactly. We confirm their assumption that the other side is hostile and won't listen, which just reinforces the very thing we're trying to fight.
So you have to totally flip the script. Instead of that knee-jerk, you're wrong, shut up.
It becomes, talk to me. I need to understand what led you to that conclusion.
And that curiosity is built on a really fundamental premise, isn't it?
It is. The idea that people aren't just born hateful. Nobody wakes up and thinks, my goal today is to be a complete monster for no reason.
There's always a reason.
Always. There's a root cause. It could be trauma, bad information, a perceived threat. Something is driving that behavior.
So we have to look past the action itself and get to the psychology of it.
Right. And to prove this principle holds true across the board, the source actually goes to some really dark places.
Yeah, they use some extreme examples, cases like Jeffrey Dahmer and Ed Gein.
And it's important to say they're not dwelling on the horrific details. They're using these cases to make a very stark point.
Which is that even these individuals weren't just born evil.
Exactly. They were shaped, they were molded by, profound trauma, neglect, really messed up influences that made them into people capable of doing those things.
And the logic is, if that principle holds true at the absolute extreme end of the spectrum,
then it has to hold true for the kind of, low-level nastiness we see online every day.
Okay, but this immediately brings up the problem that stops almost every conversation like this in its tracks.
The big one. How do you understand the cause without excusing the action?
Yes. People hear you trying to understand the why, and they think you're letting the person off the hook.
It's such a common roadblock. And the source is really, really clear on this point. Understanding is not excusing.
They call it the challenge of holding two truths at the same time.
Yes, and it's this intellectual paradox that makes it so difficult, but also so powerful. Because we're taught to treat these two ideas as if they can't both be true.
So break down those two truths for us. What are they?
Truth one is all about justice and accountability. You have to be able to say clearly what you did was wrong, and there are consequences for that. No equivocation.
Okay, that's straightforward. Accountability.
Truth two is about prevention. It's about intervention. It requires you to ask, okay, but what happened to you that made you the kind of person who does that?
And this is where it gets really interesting, because if you only apply truth one, you just punish.
Right. You get your retribution, maybe, but you don't touch the underlying cause. So the same problem will just pop up again in someone else.
But if you only apply truth two, focusing just on the cause, the trauma,
you risk minimizing the harm that was done. You ignore the victim. The only way forward is to hold both. You demand accountability for the act.
But you investigate the cause to stop it from happening again.
Precisely. Whether you're talking about Twitter arguments or, criminal justice reform.
It's one thing to talk about this in theory, but putting it into practice when you're faced with real, genuine hate, that feels almost impossible.
It does, which is why the source brings up this incredible real-world example.
The story of Daryl Davis and the Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah. This is where the theory gets tested in the most extreme way imaginable.
So Daryl Davis, a black man, a musician, decides to, what? Just go talk to members of the KKK.
He does. He chooses a path that goes against every piece of conventional wisdom. He didn't fight them. He didn't shout them down. He didn't mock them.
He chose dialogue. What was his motivation?
It was pure, genuine curiosity. He wasn't going in there to debate them or prove them wrong. His whole approach was essentially, I'm not here to judge. I just honestly want to understand why you believe this about me.
I can't even imagine the tension in those first conversations.
Oh, for sure. And this wasn't some quick fix. He had to navigate real fear, decades of baked-in prejudice. But he just kept that curious stance. He just kept asking questions.
And what happened? What was the outcome of prioritizing understanding over confrontation?
The results are just staggering. Over time, through these conversations, by connecting with them as human beings, he actually started to reach them.
Reach them how?
Some of these KKK members, they left the organization. And even more than that, some of them became his friend. They gave him their robes and hoods.
Wow, they gave him their robes. That's profound.
It really is. And the Force holds this up as the ultimate proof of concept. Think about that level of change, someone completely abandoning a core, hateful belief.
And you contrast that with what happens online. When we shout and mock and try to silence people,
What happens? Zero change.
if anything, they just dig in their heels. It forces them deeper into that identity.
Right. Hostility builds a wall around them. But dialogue creates a kind of exit ramp. The moment you show real curiosity, you completely destabilize their expectation of a fight. They're ready for conflict, but they are not ready for a human who is trying to understand their ignorance or their pain.
So we have to talk about the reality check here, because this sounds almost like a magic bullet.
And it's definitely not. The Source is very realistic about this.
It's not going to work on everyone.
No, not even close. You're not going to reach every single person. Some minds are, as the Source says, too locked in. Years of prejudice, trauma, it's just too rigid.
But that's not the goal, is it?
No, the goal isn't to convert everyone. The Source makes the point that if you can reach just one person, the effort was worth it. And that brings us to the core distinction in this whole philosophy.
Which is the difference between winning an argument and something else.
Is the difference between trying to win an argument and trying to dissolve ignorance.
That shift in phrasing, that's everything.
It is. Winning an argument is about ego. It's about making the other person look stupid. It's a temporary victory.
But dissolving ignorance.
It's about getting to the root. The bad information, the fear, the untreated pain that created that hateful belief in the first place. You're not just covering up the darkness with silence, you're trying to replace it with light.
So what does this all mean for us day to day, scrolling through our feeds? Real progress doesn't come from just shutting people up.
No, it comes from the much harder work of letting them speak and then trying to respond with, strategic curiosity instead of just raw outrage.
That's the mindset shift we need, especially in these digital spaces where it's so easy to dehumanize each other.
Because that's the ultimate point, right? Hate grows in the dark. It thrives in silence, where its roots are never challenged by empathy.
But it starts to dissolve in conversation when those roots are exposed to the light of, genuine human connection.
And that really gives us the big takeaway here. The opposite of hate isn't silence, it's understanding.
Silence might stop a fight for a minute.
But only understanding can prevent that hate from just growing stronger and coming back tomorrow.
That really is something to reflect on. If you, the listener, accept that accountability and causation have to exist together, how can you apply that the next time you see something hostile online?
Can you move your goal from just winning to trying to reach them on a human level?
Try to find the root of what they're saying.
The next time you feel that flash of anger, maybe just take a breath. Ask yourself, what pain or what ignorance could possibly be driving this? By opening that space for understanding, you might just open a door for change.
A profound thought to mull over until our next deep dive.
Thank you for joining us.